Next up, we're going to introduce Graham, and Graham's film composer, band, leader, right? All that, and Graham will tell his story. So without further ado, come on up, Graham. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool, yeah. All right.
How's it going, y'all?
It's going.
All right. I've got notes, but really we can talk about whatever people want to talk about. And so I encourage especially Sam, CJ, Harrison, and Jeremy to ask questions. I dropped a pen. But anybody who has a question, just interrupt me or not. Raise your hand if you'd rather. Because
Sure.
I want to talk about whatever it is you want to learn about. And I'm going to roughly tell you what my career looks like right now, sort of day to day, then rewind and tell you how it got to this point. Where the starting point should be is always confusing, but we won't spend too much time in elementary school. But at any given time, I've got a long list of projects. I really appreciate your format, which I didn't know anything about. I mean, learning by doing is so critical, and that you're building these networks as you're doing these projects. It's a very cool program that you've got.
Oh,
and
thank
so,
you.
I mean, it's the exact kind of thing I would tell someone to do. Like,
Right, for sure.
I had such a frustrating time in college where they wanted me to learn 2-5-1s before I moved on to something else, which was fine, but there wasn't enough learning by doing. And anyway, we'll get to college after my current state of career. So I'm always working on a whole bunch of things. I have 3 buckets, and a couple of them are larger than the others, but I've got film, TV, dance, contemporary dance, ballet, music for other people's work, essentially, where I'm scoring to picture, I'm scoring for dance, but ultimately I'm serving a higher need than the music, and that's whatever the project is, the film, the script, the choreography, and someone else gets to throw away my music or keep my music. Someone else gets to say yes or no. And so I value and am excited by those projects, but since I don't have final control, I like to have that balance. So the opposite end is the bucket where I'm a band leader and I make records and I play shows and I lead the band, and I pretty much only hire players that can both read and improvise, with a few exceptions with people who have a deep skill set that's very specific. And there I have full control. I mean, I love for players to have some freedom within the framework that I set up, but really, ultimately, I get to say what time we play, what material we're playing, and I get final say on the album. I do work with a label, and I really enjoy the collaborative aspect of working with the label owner, who gets deeply creatively involved in a fun way, but that's unique. And so I've always had this balance. If something's driving me nuts over here, where I think I've made some great music and they've just literally thrown it away. I mean, not literally in the trash can, but literally in I have to put it in a folder where we're not going to hear it anymore. And if it's for, Sony or Warner or any of the big studios, I can't, they own it. So it's in a folder somewhere. It's not like I can repurpose it. And once I've turned it in, it's their property. I've looked into some of a couple of the larger films with stars where I came in indirectly, or not through the studio, and so that my contract protected me more from the beginning. But usually in the big studios that are gonna have a lot of power. I'll get my writer's share as far as the royalties, but I don't really control it. And the contracts are like anywhere on the planet, anywhere in the solar system, anywhere in the universe from now and forever. And they really write this stuff out. Or like, it doesn't matter if, I learn how to go at the speed of light and travel to a different galaxy. I still don't own that music. So the films have stars from, Robert Downey Jr. and Jack Black to Glenn Powell, who's from here in Austin, and Keanu Reeves, and all these big names that you can go into any room and people have heard of the names of the people that have been in the films I've done. And I've worked with, Netflix, I've worked with Hulu, I've worked with Sony and Warner, and you could name any of the streamers or any of the studios, and I've probably done a project at some point with them. The ballet, contemporary dance, I do a lot of that, and I really like it. It's different where, similar to the director, the choreographer has a lot of say in the final product, and they do get to say yes or no to the music. But there's less financially at stake, and also the audio is entirely yours. Film, you've got the sound design, you've got the dialogue, and the dialogue is primary, and you are secondary. In dance, other than some particular experimental dance or something, they're not saying anything. The audio is entirely yours. And so there's a lot of freedom there. A lot of my favorite classical scores are like ballet scores, Rite of Spring and Tchaikovsky's ballets. These are really fulfilling, and dance is fun because, especially ballet, it pulls you, that narrative structure pulls you out of, your standard musical structures, because the form is dictated by the needs of the narrative rather than the needs of the music. That happens in film as well, but you're also balancing that with being one of several on the audio team. I mentioned the label, and I do a lot of work with the label. They're based in London. I met them in a roundabout way through a vinyl release. They did a soundtrack of mine, and then they were coming to South by, and we've been working a lot ever since. And we're doing a project with this guy, Bert Eon. She's passed away, but a guitarist who was a big influence on Zeppelin, but folk guitarist in this band, Pentangle. And the label owns, or they don't own the music, they own they're releasing all that work and putting a series of box sets out. So we're doing all these arrangements and covers of this obscure to me British guitarist. We're doing my own original albums. We're doing a medieval electronica album. We did an experimental, more jazz-influenced album. I'm working on a whole bunch of projects all at the same time. We took a singer called Scott Fagan, who had a minor hit in the late 60s, sounded a lot like Donovan. He had done some demos in the mid-70s, and his voice sounds great, and all the rest of the recording sounds just terrible. And so we used a stem splitter, and we took everything away other than his voice, and then I arranged and rebuilt the whole band from scratch. So it sounds like a 1974-75 recording, and the voice actually is, but it's all contemporary instrumentation. So a bunch of miscellaneous projects. I have a little nonprofit as well that does a lot of composed music. We do Texas-Mexico collaborations, working with a lot of Mexican composers. We have 2 youth programs we run, one for 5 to 18 years old, where they learn to compose, but also how to produce a concert. And then another one for 18 to 24, and that's sort of pre-professional composers who want to go into film. And we have all sorts of fancy composers who are their mentors. Mentorship is a big part of our youth programs. So, everybody from Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo to Robert Rodriguez here in town. They just meet one-on-one with these composers and give feedback, and they learn how to score the picture. And then I do private commissions, and I do a lot of work of composing to art. So, like, I've got 15 projects probably going on at any given time, similar to your constant workflow. We've got a movie with Ethan Hawke called Blue Moon that is getting, like, Ethan gets a lot of awards talk when he does roles like this. It's just ending its theatrical run. Anyway, that's a picture of my life right now. Like, we had a string quartet recording this afternoon, or this morning, and then I had a production meeting for our fundraiser for the nonprofit right after that, and then I'm making a demo for this other film, and then I took notes for this graduation talk. And that's a typical day, bouncing around between different projects. So, any questions so far?
Well, congrats, I would say right off the bat, man. Good for you. Awesome. I'd like to hear, early stuff. How'd you get into everything?
Yeah, okay.
I'd love to hear that. A little background.
So, I'm going to just touch lightly on school stuff because I think it ends up mattering. And I like the gen ed stuff as part of it because critical thinking is so important. Being able to articulate your thoughts is so important. So this broad scope thinking combined with the technical expertise, I think is a nice balance. I had an amazing music teacher in elementary school who hand-built guitars, keyboards, and conga drums for the entire class. And we would use headphones, and everybody would learn how to play. And we had piano club, and piano club would accompany the choir, and we would learn how to read chord charts. So that's how I learned to choose your own notes. And once I was choosing my own notes, I sort of went and ran with it and started creating my own music, improvising, composing. And then by the time I got to high school, this is all public school, but the very understanding and adaptable music teachers who let me do my own compositions and put together ensembles for the school concert. So, it'd be the school band and the school choir, and then me doing my personal composition thing. Then when I got to college, it didn't work out so well with me meshing with music. The music programs were very conservative, very, very conservative. Not like this place at all. Like traditional music schools are still stuck over 100 years ago, pre-recording. You can get a degree in vocal performance and not have any clue how to use the microphone. And so we did an opera a couple years ago, and we're working with the singers, and they had zero microphone skills. And they could sing at karaoke, but working on stage with that huge operatic voice, you have to be careful with the microphone. And but we were playing. Adrian Casada was in the band. We had a loud band, so that they needed to be amplified. So I quit the music department at the school I was at. This is in the Northeast, and I studied Latin American history. What I like to do at every stage of school was spend the most time in the room with the person I was going to learn the most from. And my favorite teacher happened to be a Latin American history teacher. I had a couple of good teachers in that area. And so instead of learning counterpoint, I was learning how to think, how to write, how to articulate my thoughts, how to think about what I wanted my future to be. And then I just brought my drums. I grew up playing piano. I had interest in drums, but didn't spend a lot of time with it. I just brought the drums to school and joined every band that would take me. And that was my counter music education program, was learning to play drums. And then when I was done with school, I moved to Austin. I'd grown up in the Northeast, outside of New Haven, so going into New York to play shows, but also to see shows, amazing cultural resources, obviously, also near Yale, so all those cultural resources as well. we also went to a lot of punk rock shows. We had, my brother and I had if we went to see music, if we went to see something cultural, educational, we didn't have a curfew, so we went all the time to shows. And we had some great punk rock clubs, and which couldn't be more different from going to see the symphony at Yale. They were all ages, super straight edge, hardcore punk rock kind of thing. And so that sort of DIY thing you get from playing in bands, that's what I applied to what I was doing, even though I was not doing music that was overtly punk rock or overtly that indie band kind of thing. I moved to Austin for a bunch of reasons. One, I played loud.
Did you ever make it to CBGB's? Did you go?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went in the city
for sure.
too. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. I lived in the city and I went to Yale to visit, but only for a second. So mine was the opposite. I lived in the city.
Cool. Yeah, it's it was an amazing place to grow up, but I had drums and I had piano, big loud instruments, and I did not want to live in an apartment where I shared a wall with someone else because I wanted to be loud. And I thought about California, but it was really expensive. And I'd been through Austin, and it was a place where you could rent a whole house dirt cheap and be loud and make music all the time. And Emos was free and had fantastic bands every night. And so, along with a couple friends from college, moved down here and just slowly built a network and then started playing shows. As soon as I started playing, I was playing instrumental, semi-composed, partly improvised music. Immediately people started asking me to score things. Usually it was their experimental puppet show or their student film or whatever it might be. And I just kept saying yes and yes and yes. And that saying yes leads to more things and more things and more things. If I was already in New York or thinking about California, if I intended to work in film, Austin wouldn't have been the obvious place because there was, Richard Linklater, and he and I have worked together a lot, and Robert Rodriguez, who I'm interviewing. He's at our fundraiser on Saturday, but there was very limited scene. Because of that, I started working with everybody. I was working with a whole bunch of theater companies, a bunch of dance companies, and then Rick started asking me to do some of his films. And the first feature I did with him had Winona Ryder, who is Robert Downey Jr., Woody Harrelson, and Keanu Reeves. And that was my first sort of breakout moment as far as that kind of film work. These were all actors who at the time were not at the top of their career, and Rick sort of brought their careers back to life a little bit. Robert Downey Jr. had various substance issues. Winona Ryder was known for this film Heathers, etc. John Wick didn't exist yet, and Keanu was like a surfer dude movie kind of guy. And it didn't do that well in the theaters. It did really well in England. It did great in Japan. I got this huge royalty check from the Japan run. But then it really launched that part of my career. And through that, I got an agent. I'd already had a manager, but I sort of expanded my team. And teams, the whole time, matter a lot. And that was the simple formula. You say yes, and then you get asked again if you do an okay job, and you're fun to hang out with. Back then, I was cleaning houses for a living when I was doing that Scanner Darkly film. Basically, before I found a house in Austin, I started cleaning houses with the theory that, working at the record shop, like Waterloo or something, is great for networking. It's and for hearing a lot of music. But when I was cleaning houses, my brain was pretty much 100% free to think about music. Dusting or vacuuming takes some of your brain power, but a limited amount. And there's a lot left for thoughts. And so essentially I was able to work on my career while working, and then we went out every night. Backing up from Scanner, part of how I launched here was when friends of mine were putting out my first album, and really took my time with that. And I went out somewhere every night to see a show, to see a band, to party, something for a year, every night. And it didn't matter how tired I was, but just to really build the network. I was not the most naturally social person, but I knew I needed that network for the career to work. And after a year of going out every night, you know a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And when you say I'm having an album release show, you get a bunch of people showing up. Even though I'm making a very tiny little corner of music, instrumental music hasn't had a top 10 hit in 40 years, probably. It used to be normal for instrumental music to have top 10 hits up until the mid-'80s or so. Mm-hmm. And then that went away. And so I knew that to do the kind of music I was making was going to require a little extra effort. We'll see you later. No worries. Thank you. What else? I've sort of skipped a few years, but do we have questions at this point?
Yeah. See if you guys have some specific questions? Yeah. Oh, got it. Let's start in the corner over there.
So, do you always need a mix of online and in-person networking? Is it possible to do one or the other?
You can do a lot online, and I'm sure there's a generational difference here too. I imagine if everybody in the project is younger, then it's easier to do more on your phone, social networking. But I find there's a real difference, a huge difference really between knowing somebody on the phone or knowing someone in a Zoom or any of the various virtual ways, and then actually being in the room with them. So most of the work I get comes from being physically in the room. And so if there's a premiere and then there's a party after, I go to the party because that's where the next job happens. I'll go to Sundance, or I'll go to New York, or I'll go to Cannes, wherever the film is premiering, and go. And once you're in a bunch of rooms and you're surrounded by people in the film and television world, more work happens. And people like to work with people they like, and it's a lot easier to tell if you like each other in person. That said, you can do more than ever before, obviously, online than you could when I was starting out. And that's an important part of it, but I do think you need a balance between the two.
Yeah, I would think you have a higher success rate in person, but then the world's your oyster with online, right? You can just hit up crazy amounts of people. Next question?
Yes, I wanted to ask how you met Mr. Stinson and how you're associated with the conservatory here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you, Holly. You'll meet Holly eventually, but she's wonderful. She's great. She's one of the people that work for us. She finds all kinds of people everywhere, and we haven't met before. Tonight's the first night. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known this.
Well, it's a great place, an inspiring place, and I like I said, I didn't know about the program, but the string quartet I was recording with this morning, they did know.
Sure,
they've been
of
out
course,
here, and so I'm sure we have a lot of
similar
Venn diagram overlap.
Right, of course, yes, for sure.
But I I have a studio attached to my house at the back, so it's the opposite of, maybe not the opposite of what you're learning here, but like I started recording my own stuff with an engineer that I've worked with for 35 years or something, a long time ago. There are advantages and some serious disadvantages to it, but it's the way I like to work. And I mean, I like going. I very occasionally, for the right project, we did a film with Jack Black, and we needed to record a song, and that was with like a sort of country big band. His wife and triplets, one of three triplets, and they sing harmonies, and we were going to have them. It was going to be a long day of recording. And the last thing I wanted was to be worried about my computer crashing or, the technical side of it. And so we went into a studio for that. So if the project isn't the right fit for my studio, I'm happy to go elsewhere. And certainly when we mix films, I mix along with my engineer. We mix the music, but then if the film is either a big enough scope, or if I like to go to the mix. They don't always like the composers in the film or TV mix, and I don't always go. I mean, the reason, I don't know, you all have recorded, most of you recorded bands. If you have the whole band in the room, typically you get the bass player wanting to hear the bass more, and the drummer wanting to hear the drums more, and every person is looking out for themselves and not thinking of the whole. And that's what, film mixers are used to from composers, where instead of protecting the film, they're protecting the music. And, in a battle scene or in a lot of scenes, the music's going to get buried. Doesn't matter that, 90 people are playing their hearts out on a cue. It doesn't. If it serves the scene more to have the explosions louder, well, then you're gonna be down in the mix. So I like to go to the mix because that can be very helpful if certain things come up. Like if the car engine in a scene is in the same frequency range as the low-end content of the bass part or the bass drum or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden the music that was working in the studio is not really working there because it's competing and you're losing the definition. Well, then I have to figure out with that engineer, how are we going to solve this problem? Are we going to add some more high-end to my low-end parts? Are they going to find a different engine that doesn't hit quite the same frequency range? And you work through it together. So it can be very helpful to be in the room. You just have to be careful not to be concerned more about your art than the actual project as a whole.
Right. Cool. Nice. So what else? What you got?
When you're composing for film, do you usually have to work the music around the scene, or do you kind of just hear the atmosphere of the scene, make something that fits it, and then they put it over?
So almost always, you're scoring the picture. You usually get a rough cut, and you score to that. And then now, they used to get a locked cut, which has pretty much disappeared. But after the lock cut, then you could go record the orchestra. You could do the most expensive things because you knew where the music was starting and stopping. But now technology's so fast to do edits, and that they don't care. They'll continue to change the edit up into the very last second. Right. And so you don't have that locked cut usually. So you have to have flexibility when you're making the music, that knowing that you're going to have to edit it. This is why there's a lot of MIDI combined with acoustic instruments. The MIDI is a whole lot easier to adapt if someone takes 3.5 seconds out of your music and the beats no longer work. It's you know, if you've got MIDI, you can just speed it up a little bit, or it's a whole just easier. That said, I like bringing in players. I record live players all the time. It's usually a hybrid, and certainly there are still orchestral scores that are straight up orchestra. But yeah, so it's almost always scoring a picture. I do like in certain films to read the script and start coming up with ideas early, because otherwise what happens is the editor puts in, this is going to happen anyway, but they put in temporary tracks.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are the temporary tracks? How do they affect you?
Yeah, deeply. So very hard to edit a film that's going to have music in it without music in it. And so they put temporary tracks in to edit to. The challenge is that it's very easy to fall in love with that temp track.
Yeah, the producers end up liking the temp tracks.
Exactly.
So then he's got to, build something new.
Yeah, I have to make something that they like more than something that's already working really well that the film was literally edited to. And I don't know, like if I hear Chopin ballad and I hear Horowitz play it, and that's the first version I hear, that's going to be the defining performance of it for me.
Yeah.
And subsequent performances are going to be compared to that. And that's what happens with temp tracks. At the same time, so, a lot of composers hate them, and at every level. Like Danny Elfman had, they temped a whole movie with his music, and then he could never do anything that they liked more than his own music. He was competing with his own music. They also throw away full scores all the time. 2001 is the most famous, where they had a full orchestral score, Oscar-winning composer, the whole thing, and they went with the temp tracks, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I do like to get in early and start saying, is this what your film sounds like? I make a bunch of themes, send it to the director, and sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. We had one film called Before Midnight where I sent them 5 themes, they liked one, and that became the theme for the whole film, and Sandra, the editor, was able to work with my sketches from the get-go.
Yeah. Smart.
And there was another one it was called Hitman, that we did with Netflix last year, that was super popular on Netflix. And when I first met with Rick, he thought he was making a certain kind of film. And so he described it, and I went and made that music, and then they went and shot, and it was very different from what he had pictured, which isn't typical for him. And so he's like, I don't know what to say. None of the music's right. And so I actually went down to Mexico City. I took sequencer sampler called Black Box that I just threw this stuff in there, and I did remixes. I started sending those to Sandra, and that became the basis of the score. So I had to troubleshoot, even though I'd done a whole bunch of pretty developed sketches. So there are occasions, and this film we have right now called Blue Moon, the score is really just overwhelmingly piano covers from 1943 era, and it all takes place in one bar called Sardi's. It's a famous Broadway bar in New York, and there's a piano player in the room. You see him play in a couple of scenes, and so it's background music of period music at the time. And initially I was scoring it, I was playing music along to the scenes, and then we decided that made it feel unnatural because I was being influenced by what was happening in the scene. I was playing delicate music if they were talking quietly, and if there was party atmosphere, I was playing more loudly, and that's not really the way the bar pianist would have approached it. And just because they're having a romantic moment in the corner doesn't mean that they're playing romantic music or whatever. And so Rick sent me a list of 80 songs, and I just did solo piano versions of all of them, sent them, and Sandra would put them in and chop them up. And at the end, I didn't even know. Like, I went to New York for the premiere, and I wasn't even sure at that point which tracks they used and which tracks they hadn't used. We did the soundtrack album, and like half of it's music that's not even in the movie.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and that was not the picture. But that's unusual.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
You had a question?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the influence and injection of AI?
I mean, if I was the graduate's age, I'd be more worried. I mean, certainly, I think there will be work that I do and composers do that will go away, because if you do a nature documentary and you have a low budget and you can say, I need this music, I think the AI will come along and be able to make music for that works for the director or the producer or the studio. At the same time, music has been made by humans since the very beginning of humanity, and it has never stopped. And recording technology is a tiny blip in human history, and composers are sort of a blip too. Like, we've just always been making music, and I see no reason why humans would stop making music because of AI. And there's, you want to watch LeBron put the basketball in the basket. You don't want a robot putting the basketball in the basket. There's something about the human quality there. I'm not saying that AI won't be able to make music if you hear just the audio, that you could be convinced that there's a humanity to it. But I think, I imagine live performance becoming more important again, because there's that direct connection and seeing someone do something. I think technologies come along and wipe out jobs all the time, and we still have, 3.1% unemployment or something like that. So I'm not worried about the music industry not existing or there being no jobs left for humans. I think it's a tool that we have to be responsible with, like any tool, any powerful tool like that. I haven't used it to make music, but I have used it for research and find that to be fun. We're doing this Marie Antoinette ballet, and she composed a little bit, and her teacher was a composer, Gluck, who was a famous opera composer from her time period. So I was able to research and say, give me some chord progressions from Gluck's work, and then make my own music based on these chord progressions that may or may not have been accurate. It didn't really matter. I was trying to just be inspired.
Get some ideas.
And so it's just a tool, and I've been having fun with it. You don't want to falsely put out material that is not yours in the world. But where that line is always confusing anyway.
Yeah, I would say it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. We got auto-tune not too long ago in the 90s, and everybody thought, no, we don't have to sing anymore. I think it's the same thing. If anything, you have to be smarter now, and things move fast. It'll be less expensive to make things because you can make it faster. But if anything, to improve on something AI creates, you have to even be better. So it will narrow who makes music, and certainly you'll be able to make it quicker and cheaper and things like that. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
But it's a tool. It's really what it comes down to. Humans are still going to be. We're not going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite virtual instruments when it comes to composing? Do you use a lot of virtual instruments or
Yeah, I use a ton of virtual instruments, and then I have my studio's filled with fun acoustic instruments, and I bring in players a lot. It's all of it. I have found that I like soft synths in a way more than hardware synths, partly because of the reliability, but also because of the versatility. The soft synth I use the most by far is Omnisphere, which is one on the pricier end, it's like $500 or something like that.
Have you used the new Omnisphere yet?
Oh yeah, we got that the first day it came out. Omnisphere is preset or patch forward, I would say, as far as synths go. And there's in the synth world, there's a hierarchy where making your own sounds is way cooler. I'm not very good at making my own sound. I don't build my own piano. I don't mind the preset thing, but there's a less cool factor about it. But it comes now with 20-some odd thousand patches, and it's got amazing search abilities. Very deep tagging and search, so I can find the kind of sound I'm looking for very, very quickly.
Nice.
And they've got some incredible sound designers who work on them. They literally burned a piano, and they recorded all the samples as the piano burned. And it has some super cool quality to those patches.
Wow.
They have a whole set that were like trees, where they chopped down trees and did different things with wood and made sounds, and then they bowed the insides of light bulbs. They went super deep in a way that I'm making music all the time, and so I like exploring their experiments. But then also, if you just want something like a Prophet sound or a United Juno sound from a certain era, you can come up with something like that. So it's very powerful. There are a lot of great soft synths out there. Contact is the sampler, the software sampler that we use the most. More and more of the companies that make instruments are making their own tools, and that has advantages and disadvantages. I know my way around Contact a little bit, so it slows me down sometimes with the other ones. But Contact can be slow to load. It looks roughly the same as it has forever. But I like playing with new tools all the time, and I get really Altiverb sounds amazing, but then some of those, and that's an expensive reverb. Sounds beautiful, but Valhalla makes these fun reverbs that are $50, and people use them on high-end stuff too. I've got a soft synth called Pivot that I did a whole bunch of work on recently. That was like $30 or something like that. It's FM synth, and that went into this sort of medieval electronic album, and. And I used it a bunch for this dance piece we did with Austin Water in the fall. So different tools inspire you in different ways, and that sort of narrow focus of that FM synth versus you can make any kind of sound with Omnisphere. All these tools are super fun, and like the free ones to the expensive ones. I'll just open up and listen to patches just to get inspired and mark them 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. So if I'm feeling dry and I need something inspiring, I'll put them and list them by 5 stars, and I know that I love that sound, and I'll just make something with that sound. So it's a fun way to be inspired, an easy way to be inspired constantly, because it's very deep.
Cool. So do we have one more question? What you got, Lambert?
So when you're composing, do you ever use a leitmotif and use the same theme several times in one film?
I do that a lot. Films do that less than they used to. But I like doing that in kind of all of my work, film and otherwise. And I've done it since the beginning of when I was first making compositions. You don't want to trap yourself if that theme doesn't work for a certain scene or something. You can't be dogmatic about it, but it is something like establishing a theme and then people respond. The films pay a lot more if they're using a Rolling Stones song or something like that, because it touches something deep when you have that nostalgia and that recognition, and so it resonates emotionally with people because it has so many associations. You don't have that advantage when you're making original music for film. But if you introduce a theme early on, the listener may or may not consciously know that they've heard this theme, but then you start to build a nostalgia with it. So then when it comes into the later scenes and you're using that material, it feels like the world of the film. It feels familiar. And if you're doing a sadder version or a more exciting version, it has a deeper emotional impact. So you build this knowledge early on so that you can use that to make the music more effective later.
Awesome. And I'm assuming each character probably has some thematic material.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm assuming. I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes that works really well, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of times where we go in and we have a lot of concepts for a score, and then when the reality hits, the concept doesn't work, so you have to adapt. But it's really fun when that does work.
Yeah. Okay, I have 2 more questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap it up. At least for the time being, we'll hang out and eat some more food and do whatever stuff. But just one that I wanted to ask from earlier, from your talking about doing stuff for ballet. So at what point do they film the movements and then you start writing? So, I mean, like, are you writing music first and then they start choreographing? I mean, like, where's the starting point?
I've done a lot of scoring for dance, and each choreographer is very different, and each process is very different. For a lot of contemporary dance, we go back and forth.
Okay. And are they showing you video footage of?
It can be anything from like being in the studio and showing me a literal movement there personally, or video of a thing. To describing it. One of the dance companies I work with the most, they don't, it's not traditional dance. They're like, a lot of the last bunch, the first one I did with them was with the Austin trash department. So it was like trash trucks and trash truck drivers, and like 75, Metcast 75. We did one with the power company, and it was linemen up on poles. We just did one with Austin Water, and so it's all these water trucks, and there's another like 100 people in the cast or something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
So they're showing me videos of the trucks, and it's very loosely framed as dance. But then I did another one with a choreographer who was in like the John Cage circle, Robert Rauschenberg circle, so hyper experimental. She's got whole chapters written about her in dance history books, and she doesn't like to work with music. But she liked me and wanted to work with me. But usually when she dances, there's no score. It's just the movement.
Right.
Because she does not like the music to tell the dancer what to do.
Gotcha.
And usually the dance creates the framework, and those steps go within that framework. So she, said, I want to commission you, and then great. And then we're meeting. She said, okay, no melodies, no beats, no climaxes. There's all these lists of things, all these standard musical tools that she did not want in the piece.
So just sound.
Yeah, it was more evolving sounds, and it was a lot of fun. They flew me to Sweden to play bass drum. I have a collection of bass drums, including some big orchestral bass drums, and I basically played orchestral bass drum quietly in the background for 2 weeks in Sweden, and it was great.
Yeah.
But highly experimental. The ballet starts with the story first, and there's an outline of the story. And then he does not choreograph until I'm done with the music. So it's the opposite of some of the others, and it's the opposite of film for sure. And so the first thing is the outline of the story, and then break down scene by scene, and then I'll make a bunch of sketches, and then we'll insert them into the outline, what fits with what. I will expand it and contract it to the various narrative things that have to happen in that scene. And then once I'm done, I don't change anything in theory until the opening. He might say, oh, to get across the stage, it's going to be at the long center, and they need, they can't quite get across in the amount of time they have. So I need an extra bar here or an extra bar there. But it's very minor changes. Partly because I have to turn the score into the symphony in Peter Bay, and it's not like we've done one where I bring the band, but it's not like we're changing things at the last second. It's not. If I have people improvise, then I have to notate it, and it has to be exactly the same every time.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Obviously very different.
Yeah, totally different.
For sure. Okay, so last question. I always ask the last same one at the end of each one. Okay, so imagine you are, not a lower students or 18 years old, but brand new, young, just getting into it, just getting started. Obviously you have your perspective now, but what would you be your best advice for somebody who's just getting started and getting into it? And so what would be your best advice?
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of these things already, and this learn by doing is awesome. I would focus on strengthening your strengths rather than addressing all your weaknesses. Now you have to cover your weaknesses and be able to address them to a degree, but what makes you special matters more than being able to do everything. I'd rather hire a collaborator that can do that thing that I'm weak at and really be exceptional at whatever it might be. The thing I'm good at is knowing a little bit about a lot of things, so it's a little contradictory, but that makes me hireable for a lot of different musical situations. Other people are like, Coltrane or something like that, like hyper focused, and they work within very narrow bands, and that's a super viable approach as well. But an athlete gets on that final team because they're exceptional at something, not because they're pretty good at all this stuff. And so strengthening your strengths while addressing your weaknesses. That could be hiring other people. That could be getting competent enough. But if your ears are not good for, the engineer that works with me hears compression and bad compression much more quickly than I do. He hears that pumping right away. And I just think it sounds good, and so he'll hear it, and then once he points it out, then I'll hear it, and so having that other person in the room that has a strength where I have a weakness is really helpful, and that's where the building a team and building a community comes in, and then so while you're strengthening those strengths and being ready for the opportunities that come along and making sure that you're ready, it's that networking that you're doing by doing all these projects, by going out, and we were talking about it earlier, just embracing that part of the life and not seeing it as a hardship. I mean, there are hardships in a lot of careers, but having to go to a party or go to the bar is really low on the list of things that are hardships. And so building networks, and that could be also some social media stuff too, of course. But this is where the work comes from. This is how you build relationships. And when you're making art, relationships matter, as they do in everything, but they're critical. And ultimately, it's going to be people you love that you work with the most, and vice versa. And so participate in the social things. Even if you're a shy person, you find your way around it. How can you be social and engaged? Because as you build those networks, that's how you're going to be able to do things that you want in life, and that's how you're going to be able to build a life in audio.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Awesome. Very cool. Well, cool. So everybody out in cyberspace, take care, be safe, and then yeah, let's hang out. You know,
Cool.
chill out for a few minutes and eat maybe a little more food, and that's it.